Second question. The county has a planning department with professional planners. Yet, time and time again, the commission overrules them as well as the planning advisory committees. When project variances come before you, what weight will you give the recommendations of the planning staff?
I will give equal weight to the interests of the public on both sides of every issue and the planning staff, and weigh all of those together to make a fair decision.
I will take into consideration everyone's point of view. That's always important. At any point in time, whether it's new information, you need to be aware of that. As far as one particular entity, the planning staff is what the question is about, I'll take it into consideration, but my biggest concern and my commitment, my 100% commitment, is to what the people of District 6 wants, and the majority of the people. You can't please everybody all the time, but you've got to look and ask and find out what the residents want. That's why it's so important. We can stand up and represent you, but we need you also to support us in helping you. When we have these meetings that come up, and we've got the one coming up on October 29th, it's one thing for a certain commissioner to voice the opinion of the residents, but we need that room packed. We need all the residents there to show that support in order to encourage that the decision of the majority is what actually occurs.
I think you need to bring experience so that when somebody who's a planner brings something to you, you have an idea of what they're bringing to you. I think too much of the time staff is relied upon because there's a lack of experience by the commissioners who are relying upon staff. For example, does anybody even know what a variance is or the process to go through to get a variance for land? I myself had a little contest with the Village of Wellington where I spent 1 year and 3 months because they did not want me to put a fence up on my equestrian property. I went back to the Articles of Restrictions, I went through the ULDC, Unified Land Development Code, I found an exemption to the 50-foot setback. After 1 year and 3 months, and 11 of the general counsels from Tallahassee, I gave them an education of how they needed to rewrite their ULDC in Wellington. This was a number of years ago, right around 2000. So if somebody brings something to me along with the last 6.5 years of the county, where I've been through the engineering department, I've been through all the different levels of permitting. I built and designed my own house. I designed my own place right now. I did every aspect of it. I went through Wellington, I went through the fire department, I went through planning and zoning. I have 3 different designations on my own home. One is a single family residence, one is a multi-use building, and the third one is a bona fide agricultural building. It would be impossible for somebody to sit there and talk to me about a particular issue that I don't already have some sort of experience on. I'm not an expert and I'm not a land planner, but at least they have a frame of reference because for the last 15 years, I've owned an equestrian facility that I took from concept to completion, and yeah, I drove the dozer to clear all the land. I have an idea of what's going on, and it's tough to fool somebody when you have the power and strength of knowledge.
Next question. Lox Groves a major problem. Progress is coming. Lox Groves is in the crosshairs. The citizens feel we don't have enough control over all of our roads in our town as far as traffic control. As an example, cut-through traffic, speed limits, and other traffic control devices. This includes Okeechobee Boulevard. If elected, what would you do to have Palm Beach County give our town council more control over our traffic problems? Who's that?
I would encourage working with the town of Lox Groves the issues with traffic are very well founded, considering Minto West and GL Homes along Okeechobee Boulevard. Right now, as we drove here, as you notice as you're going down the road in the highway, just imagine it with all of the extra density that's going to occur. There are concerns over widening the roads. What about, especially in this special community, you don't just have cars, you have pedestrians crossing the street, you've got bicycles, and of course you've got horses. You don't want a traffic accident because of all of this extra traffic that's coming through. There's been talk about getting possibly a traffic light at D Road, and the community wants that, and possibly getting Palm Beach County involved with that. I would support those things. We need to protect the community, we need to protect the citizens. One of the other issues as far as safety and traffic is that perhaps it doesn't currently meet the amount of traffic necessary. But that's okay, you can still get things done. They had a area in Wellington where they wanted a traffic light as well, and it did not meet the traffic requirements. But it was able, with enough, back to the same thing, citizen support and showing up to the meetings, they were able to get the traffic light. So that's what it's going to take.
You have a very unique rural community here. You already have some traffic calming devices. It's called a 1.5 wide road along the canal. You have dirt roads. What you need is preservation of lifestyle and somebody to make sure that your way of life and your choice of your forever homes, your choice of your lifestyle is not impeded upon. You need a strong commissioner that says you made a choice, the same choice that somebody made to live next to a golf course or next to the ocean. You need somebody that's going to stand here and champion your causes to say, this is exactly what is needed because this is exactly what is wanted and this is exactly what exists, perhaps in a little bit better condition. And you need to have an interlocal agreement between both Loxahatchee Groves and the county that, number one, preserves the integrity of your town.
Yeah, I'll bring up the D Road issue as well. That's the one I've heard the most about. And, we do need some road improvements. Whether or not Minto is approved and what they're asking for or what they're already approved for is sort of a moot point right now because that road, Okeechobee Boulevard, and some of the roads have been failing at their level of service for years. Improvements on those roads have been on the MPO plan for years, so they need to be done. I would prefer that any road improvements, like Andy said, maintain the integrity of the community. I don't want to see big, 4 or 6 lane highways coming through here, but some safe bike paths and some better sidewalks to make it safer for kids and families that are out exercising at night or walking to school, much needed. This is a long, dark stretch of road that I'm sure most drivers on it are not obeying the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. There has to be some devices put up in place to make sure everybody is safe when they're driving on this road, especially at night. The area has been asking for a traffic light at D Road for a very long time. I'm not quite sure what's happened and why that hasn't happened, but we do need to push for any safety measures that we can put in place to protect local residents.
Next question. This concerns the Florida Department of Transportation expansion plans for Southern Boulevard. If elected, what would you do to assist Loxahatchee Groves in changing the Florida DOT current plans for Southern Boulevard to include a traffic light and an intersection at D Road and Southern? The lack of this intersection will cause problems for citizens, including the U.S. Post Office, businesses in the Loxahatchee Groves Shopping Center, the Loxahatchee Groves Town Office, and the gas station. It will force more traffic problems within our own town by having more traffic flow, either east or west, to go to E Road or to B Road. If they wanted to go east on Southern Boulevard, they can't go east. They would have to turn and go west, make a U-turn to come back to go east on Southern, or else come up into Loxahatchee Groves to use our internal roads to go east or west. I've had many complaints on this. Traffic light is also needed to break the traffic between the lights currently on E Road and D Road intersection. In other words, the the speed limit is 55. I wish I had a nickel for everybody that stayed 55.
It'd be broke.
It'd be broke. So that's what the problem is. So you as, whichever one gets elected, what would you do to help out problem?
And it's F road, not E road, just to make
Yeah.
sure that the newspaper gets it right.
Oh, okay.
Everybody up there gets it right.
That's correct. I've got a typo here. Thank you.
As a state road, there's certain standards. It's also a state thoroughfare. So the state DOT does have the presiding jurisdiction over the road. But with that, the county commission also has the ability to add intensity and density to the area along that road. For example, over by Highland Dunes, there was the topic of of establishing what they call an employment center, which basically can mean anything: more traffic, more jobs, more whatever. But again, it means more use of the road. You have to work with a balance because there's different performance standards as judged by the county engineering department for what constitutes a light and the speed limits. For example, you can only have a speed limit of a certain speed if there's a certain distance between lights, like on the highway. There's a certain distance between the on and off ramps which dictate speeds. There ought to be certain allocations for the fact that this is a rural area, yet there's a state thoroughfare right out front. So with the county commission and with the land use approvals, you need to look at it in the totality, the same way you need to look at Minto. Because the more you put along State Road 80, you are going to need to account for that traffic. So as a master plan, a sector plan, or overview of the entire area, you have to make sure that whatever will be allowed by the state Department of Transportation can work in concert with whatever land use changes that you make. There's only certain distance that you can go with the county on a state road, but you need to have a strong representative in your corner that can help to influence or add insight to any of those decision-making processes. And if you don't get the answer you like, you just don't turn away. You have to continuously move forward to get what is needed, especially citing the safety concerns. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you are not overburdening any road improvements that the state make by continuously approving more and more on the state road with limited access points, because it doesn't matter how fast you go down the road, the intersection is always where the bottleneck and the problem is. You have to keep however many intersections, how many accesses in and off of side roads to that thoroughfare to make sure you have the greatest safety and the greatest capacity within reason through a rural community.
This is the area where I excel the most on how to work with a state agency. Like I mentioned earlier, I have 20 years of experience working with agencies and the legislature in Tallahassee. So as far as having a county commissioner that's completely comfortable with being able to sit down with our elected and our appointed officials up in Tallahassee, including FDOT, including Secretary Prasad if he ends up being reappointed depending on the election, able to work with them across the board, able to pull in members. You know, you've been up in Tallahassee before, been sitting at the table in those meetings. I'm completely capable of being able to pull our senators and representatives from both parties, because we have a lot of Democrats that represent us in Tallahassee, but the power is held in the hands of the Republicans. So you have to be able to have somebody that can work with both parties. I'm able to do that, build consensus, work with the agency, change statute if we need to, change some of the agency rules if that's what we need to do. But anything that concerns you with State Road 80, I will be a commissioner that can work with you and work with the agencies that we need to, FDOT, and make those changes, or at least advocate 100%. I don't give up easily. I've worked on a bill for 15 years in Tallahassee that just got passed this year. So I'm tenacious, if nothing else, so able to get it done, and we'll fight till you tell me that you don't need me to fight for you anymore, but I'll be up there doing it for you.
Thank you. The first thing I would do is meet personally and sit down with the town to discuss the plan of action and what we're going to do. Second, bring in the county staff and collaborate with them, and finally meet with the state representatives to see how we're going to make this happen. But it's going to take a collaborative effort, but we need to go through the process. First, with the residents right here in the town of Loxahatchee Grove and the officials to determine our plan of action, and then bring in the county and finally the state.
Next question. This concerns Palm Beach County financial assistance. To my knowledge, Palm Beach County hasn't assisted Loxahatchee Groves on any project since we've been incorporated. Could be wrong. To my knowledge. If elected, what would you do to assist Loxahatchee Groves in receiving financial assistance from Palm Beach County for major expenses such as the traffic light on Okeechobee Boulevard? Who's next?
Well, you know, the first part of that question, I'm afraid you would have to ask your existing county commissioner why that's been the case. My promise to you as the county commissioner is that I would work with the town and advocate 100% for all of your needs. Whenever you ask for it, open door. You bring an issue to me, I'll be your advocate on the county commission fighting for it. If that includes money for a traffic light, if that includes money for road improvement, or drainage help, or a park, or library programs, or help with law enforcement, fire rescue, whatever the need is in the town of Loxahatchee Groves, I will be a committed advocate up there on the days, pushing for your issues all of the time.
In regards to the traffic light on Okeechobee, this past week, the town of Loxahatchee Groves has just agreed to go ahead and spend, I think it's approximately $57,000 to have the engineer design the traffic light. At that point, I believe it's been determined the number is $240,000 is the cost that it would take to construct the traffic light. Funding is going to be key, and working with the county to get that paid for, whether it is Loxahatchee Groves and how much the county can help. We can do this with everyone's support, but it is going to take everyone's support in front of the county to make it happen.
I do believe in neighborhood support, but it starts with your leader. If we're talking about only having about $600 million out of a $4 billion budget, it's discretionary funds of the county commission. You have 7 commissioners who are responsible to their constituents to get the best bang for the buck and the buck for their constituents. You need to have a county commissioner that can very eloquently, very persuasively, and very conducively to actually achieving a goal, lobbying, representing, advocating for you to actually be able to get it done. And the best way to do that is to have knowledge of what you're talking about. You need to be the most powerful voice, not forceful, but the most powerful voice to explain to the other 6 commissioners that your need in traffic safety in this case is more important than perhaps something else done at one of the golf courses, something at one of the pools. And you need that commissioner that stands up, makes the motion. If the motion is made prior, you need somebody who makes a substitute motion. If that substitute motion isn't heard, you make a substitute motion. But it's a battle down there, and we've been losing the battle. You need to send somebody in who understands that knowledge is power, knowledge is confidence, and knowledge is persuasive. To get the rest of the board to follow along and look to the district commissioner. Because when an issue comes up in front of the county, the way it was always supposed to be is that the county commissioners would look to that district commissioner for leadership. If you're silent, you're going to be the last one at the table. When it's important, You have to stand up, you have to push, and you have to be that effective force to convey your knowledge to then persuade others that your need is more important than perhaps their want.
Okay, thank you. The next question was from Keith Harris, who wasn't able to be here tonight, concerns urban development. Undeveloped farmlands west of the Groves are destined for urban development, threatening our distinctive rural lifestyle. In the 80s and 90s, the state of Florida bought various tracts throughout the Keys to stop development and protect the environment. The properties of GL Homes, Island Dunes, and other developments could be purchased. The farmlands be returned to marshes, which would protect our environment and direct our lifestyle would dissipate. What is your thoughts on this concept? A fast-track petition solicitation in just one weekend revealed that 95 Grove residents and 19 county residents opposed the town's funding of a traffic light on Okeechobee Boulevard. Our town council will spend $390,000. Why isn't the county funding the light with impact money from MISHA? Your thoughts? Next.
Let's go to the concept. I think it's a wonderful concept to preserve land. Isn't that what we call the ag reserve? Wasn't that why we issued bonds, the ag reserve? I think it's a fantastic concept. The problem is, the rule of the day is whatever happens with 4 votes on that day. Perpetuity only means 3 more votes. You need to constantly re-elect or elect somebody who understands it and stands the ground. We can't pick and choose the referendum that fits us for the day. We want term limits, and we want to protect the ag reserve, but not today because we have a new board in there. And these 4 votes are more important than the whatever percentage and however many thousands of votes that came on. It's a constant battle because it's a slippery slope and you take just a little along the way. You draw the line, this is what it was intended for, and that's the way it stays. And you have to elect people that are strong enough to do that.
The first question, funding it on impact fees, we don't have any impact fees from Minto yet to fund anything. I mean, if that becomes an option, absolutely push to make sure that those funds are used. Push to make sure that any impact fee funds that are generated in this area are spent in this area and not in other areas east of where we sit right now. On the land purchase, you asked, the question actually was, would you support the state buying land? The state hasn't funded that for years because they haven't had the money to. We all have a big opportunity this election cycle to change that a little bit by the approval of Amendment 1, which I think is a step in the right direction, being able to use a percentage of dock stamp revenues to preserve land. If that passes, and it has to have 60% of the vote to pass as a constitutional amendment, then perhaps what we could do is advocate for some of those funds to come back to Palm Beach County, and maybe, as the economy continues to improve and we see a surge in our budget, and we have some resources that we can use to leverage with the state funding to be able to go out and purchase lands. I think that's a viable option. I don't know if it's an option on Highland Hills because that property has already been approved for development. But other properties that have not yet been approved for development, it's certainly an option I'd be willing to look at.
Yes, the impact fees are for the roads, for the schools, and all the impacts of a development in an area. The traffic light that we've talked about, the approximate cost is $240,000. Let's use that number. Impact fees to these roads and the schools. For instance, within the last, I think it's 6 months to a year, the county gave away $69 million in impact fees. it forgave them from developers. Like easily could have covered a traffic light. That's why it's so critical. Why would we take from the citizens' pockets, because then we've got to pay for it in our tax dollars, why would we take from them and give it to developers and builders who are already very, very profitable? It's the reverse concept. We need to protect our citizens, the people who live here, not the builders, developers who build and then go back to whatever area they are from. That's why it's so important, the Office of the Inspector General, to watch over these kinds of things and not give away impact fees. Because if we give those things away, ultimately, we usually pay for it out of our own pockets.
You passed it?
No, I started, yes.
Oh, you started, okay.
I'll give more though, I forgot
Okay, that's all right.
So next question.
Next question. Marge, would you like to read your question?
You're doing fine.
Okay, all right. This is a wrap-up question. How will you get the other commissioners to understand the issues of the western communities? Our area has a country mentality, and the rest of the commissioners seem to have a city mentality. Since years ago, the residents agreed to pay to keep land in the ag reserve undeveloped. Should the new commissioners be allowed to change this and give building rights? What is your opinion about how the land in the ag reserve should be handled going forward? How would you convince the other commissioners that more money should be spent in the western area for infrastructure to adjust for the amount of development the commission is approving? Who's next?
In 1 minute? Jeez, Mark.
Give it to your best.
Okay, we'll do two questions there. The first one on the ag reserve. Obviously, we're sitting in right now the largest part of agricultural industry in Palm Beach County in District 6. Ag reserve is not in District 6, but I support agriculture. It's a $2 to $3 billion economic impact on Palm Beach County. We need agriculture. We grow food here. I don't want to have to continue to import food from countries, especially as we deal with stability overseas, or instability overseas. At the same time, there are some small changes that need to be made in the ag reserve. For instance, right now, the packing plants there, USDA requirements on food safety are so much stricter now than they were when the ag reserve was put into place. And they require separate spaces and much larger facilities for those packing plants. And that's an agricultural use of the land. And right now, if they wanted to expand upon their packing plant on those properties that are already approved for that use, they can't. And so we risk losing some of our agricultural industry to other parts of Florida or other parts of the world. So I don't want to change the intent of the ag reserve, but I do think that some small changes are needed just to make sure that we can protect the agricultural industry that we already have in Palm Beach County. And the second question, part of that question was... It's two questions. On infrastructure needs,
Yeah.
I'll be short on that one. Educate and advocate. We have to educate the other commissioners what we're doing here, and we have to be able to be a powerful advocate for the issues in our district. That's verbal, that's visual, that's taking them out here, showing them things, bringing everyone sitting here forward before the county commission and sharing your stories and your issues with them, but educate and advocate our other county commissioners.
Thank you.
Nobody can tell your life story better than you can. I own 2 pieces of property that are agricultural, residential. I have a horse farm, I got a John Deere tractor. Nobody has to teach me how to tell somebody about my own lifestyle. I know how to do that. It's my choice. I've already built board consensus to be able to have an area that is an equestrian community, 400 homes, small one off of Lake Worth Road. I've already built board consensus. And one of the ways that I did that, you can't underestimate